club, you couldn't be more wrong. Don't be surprised when that girl you like ain't who you'd bring home to your mom. You wanna meet the right one, you gotta be the right one. You wanna meet the right one, you gotta be the right one to meet the right one.
What's going on, Revolution Church? We are so glad you are joining us this week. If you are here live or you are joining us online right now, I'm just so appreciative that you're joining us as we are kicking off a brand new series this weekend that we have titled Love Song. Now, what we're going to do over the next 4, maybe 5 weeks, I may extend it a week, is we are going to go verse by verse through the book of the Bible called the Song of Solomon, or it's been referred to as the Song of Songs. Augustine, the great biblical scholar, once said, where Scripture speaks, God speaks. We know that God speaks through the Bible, and where God speaks, we have to speak on it, and we have to teach on it. And we've got to speak from that. So as we go through this series, we're going to be talking about a lot of things that many of you have never heard talked about in church before. You are going to be absolutely blown away by some of the content as we get into this book of the Bible. It's one of my favorite books of the Bible. I look forward to preaching it every single time. And in just a minute, I'll show you really kind of the breakdown of the Song of Songs. But it does show a relationship between a husband and a wife and how it progresses. And so what we're going to be doing as we go through this is we're going to talk about when they're dating or courting. We're going to really redefine dating. Or when they're engaged, they're probably engaged. And that's what we're going to talk about today, when you're courting, dating, engaged. Next week, we're going to take a look at their wedding day. The next week, we're going to take a look at a fight that they get into, and it really is a blueprint for us on how we're supposed to argue in relationships and with our spouse. Then we are going to take a look at the honeymoon, or in other words, the bedroom. And so you saw the video beforehand on, hey, don't need to have the little kids in here during this sermon. We've got Rev Kids. It's Six Flags Over Jesus. It's an incredible ministry. Your kids will love it. And they need to be in there during this series unless you're ready to have some talks. Now, if you've got a 5th grader or above, and yes, at 5th grade, if you have not talked to them about sex and different things like that, you're already behind because they've already heard it all in school. They've already seen it all online, most likely. And so they need to be in here to learn and to hear what God has to say about all these subjects. But that will be the week we go over that. And then we're probably going to do another week where we talk about how to make things last in marriage, how you get longevity in marriage. Well, we're going to be talking about dating this week, and we're really going to be speaking this week to the single people, whether you're dating, whether you're courting, whether you are engaged, but you are not married yet. Maybe you're here this weekend, maybe you're joining us online, and you've been divorced, but you find yourself in a stage of life where you are single. That's what we're going to take a look at this weekend. Now, most people in here, no matter if you're divorced, no matter if you're married, all of us would say one of two things most likely about the relationships in our life or the marriages that we've had in our lives. A lot of people would say, man, it's the worst thing I've ever been through. The biggest amount of pain and the largest scars I have in my life are a result of the relationships I've gotten myself into, or they're a result of the marriage that I had or I am currently in right now. But on the other side of that are people that have done their best to do it God's way, which is what we're going to explain during this series. And they would say the opposite of that. They would say, one of the best things in my life has been my relationship with my life. When we got started dating, when we courted, when we got engaged, and then when we got married, it's been one of the highlights of my life has been this relationship with my wife or with my husband. Our desire during this series is for all of us to walk away knowing how to hopefully get to that second response, no matter where you're at right now and what season you're in. We want you to be able to say, my relationships, my marriage, man, it's the best thing in my life. So we're going to take a look at the first two chapters. I'm going to have to fly through these. I have 9 points for you guys this weekend. 9, really 10, but I'm 9, and I had to cut it down to get to 9 because I'm going to be flying through these first two chapters. We're going to go verse by verse. Going to be a little bit of the deeper end of the pond. Song of Solomon is written in what we call Hebrew poetry, so it's kind of hard to understand at times, but we are going to do our best to explain it as best we can. We're going to start out in chapter 1 in verse 1. So you guys get ready for this. Look at your neighbor and say, are you ready for this series? Come on, man. Come on. Hey, D, look at your neighbor. Are you ready for this series? Say it to him. Come on, man. Come on. So here we go. Verse 1. It starts out by saying this, and this is pretty significant what it starts out with. The entire book or song starts out by saying this. This is Solomon's Song of Songs. Everybody say Song of Songs with me. 1, 2, 3. Song of Songs. If you're joining us online, participate in this because I promise it helps. Say Song of Songs on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Song of Songs. This is Solomon's Song of Songs, more wonderful than any other. Point number 1. This is the greatest of all songs according to the Bible. The greatest of all songs. When Solomon says Song of Songs, it's similar to when we call Jesus Lord of Lords or the King of Kings. This is the greatest of all songs. Douglas O'Donnell, great resource. He wrote some great commentaries on this book of the Bible, and I've really been learning a lot from him. He says this about the Song of Songs. This is a song we can and should sing in the bedroom, the church, and the marketplace of ideas. This is very significant because Solomon penned roughly 3,000 proverbs or poems. He wrote over 1,000 songs that we have record of. And out of over 4,000 poetic things that he wrote, Solomon is saying, this is the greatest song I have ever written. And I believe what he's trying to teach us is your relationship with your spouse is the greatest song you are ever going to sing with your life. Now, there's some speculation and some division over when Solomon wrote this. I'm of the belief that Solomon wrote the Song of Songs when he was a young man, and then he wrote the book of Proverbs when he was middle-aged, speaking to his sons mainly in Proverbs. We'll talk more about that later. And then he wrote the book of Ecclesiastes when he was older. But there are some that would suggest that Solomon actually wrote the Song of Songs when he was older. If you know anything about Solomon, you know that he had about 1,000 wives and concubines, eventually fell away from the Lord because he got out of this monogamous relationship that is detailed here in the Song of Songs. And so some have suggested that this is a repentant song that Solomon wrote toward the end of his life, really asking for forgiveness and repenting of the things he had done to show once he'd been through doing the wrong things, really writing about the way things should be between a husband and a wife. Either way, it gives us some incredible insight into the relationship between a male and female when they're dating, when they get engaged, when they get married, and after they've been married. The 2nd century rabbi Akiba ben Joseph wrote this about the Song of Songs. And I'm saying this because I want us to hold this book in high regard, because in America, we've stayed away from the subjects that are dealt with in the Song of Songs, some of them, especially sex, because we just don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to freak anybody out. But this is the Song of Songs, y'all. Listen to what Akiba ben Joseph said. He said, all the ages are not worthy the day on which the Song of Songs was given to Israel. For all the writings are holy, but the Song of Songs is the holy of holies. Over these next 4 or 5 weeks, we are going to go through 8 chapters, 117 verses, and we are going to take a look at what it means to be a husband and a wife and the relationship that they have. Now, I want to point this out before we get going. Some would suggest, in a way to not have to get into uncomfortable topics, that the Song of Songs is what's referred to as an allegory between God and the nation of Israel, or Jesus and the church. That is completely false. It is very clear, and I'm going to point a couple things out today to make this clear, that this poem, this song, is absolutely literal. It is about a husband and a wife. It is about Solomon and the one he loves that's referred to as the Shunammite, okay? So this is absolutely between a husband and a wife. Now, the reason we are going to go verse by verse through this as I prayed about this series is because the Song of Songs is actually one of 5 scrolls, one of 5 books of the Bible that the Hebrews would read at Passover every single year. They would read Song of Songs, Ruth, Esther, Ecclesiastes, and Lamentations. And so when I really prayed about how to structure this series, I said to myself, you know what? If it's good enough for the Hebrews to read every single year, then it's good enough for us to go verse by verse through, because I believe God really wants to teach us. Now, you're going to see the progression of this relationship, like I told you at the beginning. We've got a graphic that we are going to show you right now on the screen. This is the widely accepted view of Song of Songs. There are some people that really view it different. It's a pretty controversial book, but the first couple chapters are really them before they're married, as we're going to get into this, and they're engaged. Then chapter 3, we see the wedding procession and the wedding day. Chapter 4, we see them consummate the marriage. And then from chapter 5 on, it's really them married, and they have a fight, they make up, and it gets into some crazy detail. And I'm going to be walking a tightrope during this. And so this is where we're going with the Song of Songs as we break this down. 2 main characters, Solomon and the Shulamite. There are some of her friends that come. I believe God has a line in this, and we'll talk about that probably in week 2. You'll see that next week when God speaks in the midst of something that's pretty incredible. We're getting ready, though, to hear the wife talk, the future wife, the Shulamite. Now, I believe the Shulamite is a young lady named Abishai from 1 Kings chapter 1 and chapter 2. And the reason I believe that is because Abishai was a Shulamite. She took care of David, who was Solomon's father. It appears, if you read the story, that David liked her. It appears he liked her so much that when his brother tried to marry her, he actually kills his brother. It kind of indicates that maybe he had an eye for her. And so I believe that's who it is. But she speaks, and this is what she says starting in verse 2. Y'all with me? Say, I am. She says this, "Kiss me and kiss me again, for your love is sweeter than wine. How pleasing is your fragrance." Stop right here just for a second for all the guys in here. Just very practically, I want to point this out right out the gate. If you are trying to attract someone and you're single, if you are trying to attract your wife, fellas, and you're married, it's very important that she points out his breath smells really good. So make sure you brush your teeth and you use scope. And also, he smells good. So make sure you take a shower and clean yourself up, maybe a little bit of cologne that she likes. It's very, very important. You're going to see as we go through the Song of Songs that all 5 senses are mentioned through this book, okay? So she says, "Kiss me and kiss me again. Your love is sweeter than wine. How pleasing is your fragrance. Your name is like the spreading fragrance of scented oils." That's very important. It's going to go with my second point. Your name is like the spreading fragrance of scented oils. No wonder all the young women love you. Take me with you. Come, let's run. The king has brought me into his bedroom. This is the actual first point of my sermon. The first point that I mentioned a minute ago wasn't really a point. This is the first practical applicational point. Number 1, what we see right out the gate is that the Shulamite is focused on her character while she looks forward to her wedding day and her wedding night. So point number 1 for us is focus on your character before you get married. Jesus would say it like this: seek first the kingdom of God, and He will give you a wife or a husband. He will give you everything you need. When she says right here, your name, she is speaking. Your name is like the spreading of fragrance. She's speaking to his character. When she says all the young women think you are attractive, she's speaking to his reputation in the community and in his life. Don't miss this. She has a sexual attraction towards her fiancé. And so we see right out the gate that sexual attraction is normal, but she also is waiting, which tells us she's trying to be godly. So purity is what is godly. She is waiting even though she has these feelings toward her fiancé. She waits. In fact, 3 times in the Song of Songs, we're going to read one of them today, she says, do not awaken love until it's time. Chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 8. Do not awaken love till it's time. Now notice something. What she is feeling toward her fiancé and her future husband is not dirty. It's not wrong. There's nothing wrong with the way they are feeling, but they're making sure they are honoring God with their feelings by waiting. You see, sex is never sinful when it takes place God's way and for God's glory. In fact, I would say this, sexual attraction is totally unavoidable if you were going to court, if you were going to date, if you were going to be engaged to someone. We see here the struggle she's having in wanting to be close to her fiancé, but the priority in her life is honoring God. And I just want to say this, and we're going to find this out as we go through this. God is pro-sex when we engage in the act as He designed it and when we do it for His glory. That's going to blow the narrative up that some of y'all have been taught in youth groups growing up and in churches growing up that have tried to scare you to death. God is actually for it when we do it the way He designs it, when it's in the right place, and when it's done for His glory. I watched the Super Bowl last Sunday, and I thought about this when I was studying this week. Have you ever noticed that the championship game is never played at the beginning of the season? You have to go through several games to get to the championship game. Well, what she's saying right here is, I'm ready for the Super Bowl with my fiancé, but I'm going to play through the season until I get there. I'm going to play through the season until I get there. That's what she means when she says, take me with you to the bedroom. Can't wait to make it to the Super Bowl, but I'm going to wait. Valentine's Day is today. It's the 14th for those that are here on Sunday. And the other day, I got to go with my wife. Someone got us a gift certificate. And for the first time ever, we got to go to the steakhouse, Ruth's Chris. And it was absolutely insanely good, y'all. I don't know if you've ever been to Ruth's Chris, but I would recommend it because they got some of the best steak, just food in general. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about this passage and how it starts out, and I was thinking about how crazy would it have been if with my wife, the love of my life, the one I married, I said, you know what, let's go get 99-cent hamburgers. No, man. No, we went and got the best steak there was. This is what the Shunammite is saying. I'm not going to settle for a 99-cent hamburger before we're married. I'm going to wait until we can get the best that there is, and we can honor God with this inside of marriage. You see, as we read through this, ladies, you're going to find that this speaks a lot to you. The book of Proverbs, Solomon wrote it too, but it's been called the book for boys because you never see the word daughter in it, and you see the word son some 40 times. Proverbs 31, that's even about the virtuous woman, Solomon wrote it to his sons, telling them, this is the kind of woman that you're supposed to look for. But the Song of Songs has been noted as being a book for girls because it's a lot of it is about females speaking and the feelings that they're feeling. And what it's teaching us is, if you have patience before you're married, you can have passion after you're married. One commentator put it this way: have uncompromised purity now so that you can have unquenchable passion when you're married. If Proverbs was telling men, hey, go take a cold shower and don't mess up before you're married, then the Song of Solomon is telling the young ladies, hey, go take a cold shower and don't mess up before you're married. Well, then, after she speaks, we see some of her friends chime in. It says, how happy are we? These are some of her friends that speak. And guys, if you're ever going to have a girlfriend, if you're ever going to have a wife, you just need to understand she's going to have friends. They're going to be a part of it. They're going to speak into everything. They're going to talk about everything y'all do. So just get ready for it. But look at the kind of friends she has. Listen to what they say. They say, how happy we are for you, O king. We praise your love even more than wine. Number 2, I want you to understand this. The success of your relationships depends a lot on who you surround yourself with. Just very simply put, we're going to see more of this as we go further into this book. Good friends give good advice at the end of today, but I want you to notice they want this relationship to be successful, they want it to be godly, and they want it to be honoring. They are encouraging them. These are not toxic friends or family members who are causing drama and seeking to destroy this relationship. These are friends that are actually for them. I want you to notice this as well. We've already mentioned that she's talking about his reputation, which speaks to what people are saying about him, but she's also listening to wise and godly counsel on her relationship. See, it's very important that every single one of us, teenagers in here especially listen to this, single people in here especially listen to this, that we all listen to godly counsel when it comes to our relationships. Let me put it this way very practically. Teenagers in here, if your parents look at you and say, that is not a good choice, then you need to go running because they have your best interest in mind, and if they love Jesus, they're speaking the truth to you. It's extremely wise to listen to godly counsel when it comes to who you're going to date, who you're going to be engaged to, who you're going to marry. Listen to your pastors, listen to your parents, listen to your godly friends and family, because one of the tactics of the enemy, I tell my daughter this all the time, she turned 13 this year, one of the tactics of the enemy is to isolate you and have you make your own decisions with some boy that you get smitten with or some girl that you think is hot, guys. You will inevitably, you will make bad decisions if you don't have wise counsel. Well, then she starts talking again. And here the young woman speaks, and then she says this, how right they are to adore you. I am dark, and listen to this, ladies. I am dark but beautiful. O women of Jerusalem, dark as the tents of Kedar, dark as the curtains of Solomon's tent. Don't stare at me because I am dark. The sun has darkened my skin. My brothers were angry with me. They forced me to care for their vineyards, so I couldn't care for myself, my own vineyard. I know today that people go to tanning beds, and it's more attractive in our culture for people to have a tan. But in Solomon's day, if you had a tan, it meant that you were of lower stature and lower class. And so what was more attractive is people that were more white or more pale than they were dark. Here she is saying, I'm dark. Don't look at me. Point number 3, very, very important, men. All women have varying insecurities. She is here saying to him, I do not look like the models. I do not look like the cover of the magazines. I don't look like the cultural standard of beauty, and I have serious physical insecurities about myself, not only physical, but you see that she's got some insecurities about her family, her crazy family that mistreated her and made her work, some of her brothers that were not nice to her, and she's got some baggage with that. In just a minute, you're going to see how Solomon deals with this and what his response to this is. And all through this book, one of the greatest things that I love about this book is how Solomon deals with her insecurities. You'll see it in just a minute. But she continues and says, tell me, my love, where are you leading your flock today? Where will you rest your sheep at noon? For why should I wander like a prostitute among your friends and their flock? She's asking him, hey, where are you working today at noon? Because I'd like to have a lunch date with you. She says, hey, I get special treatment. I'm not like all these other prostitutes. I'm not like all these other women. I want to be able to meet with you in the middle of your workday. I want to have special things to do with you that no one else gets. Well, then he speaks for the first time, and listen to what he leads with. If you don't know, O most beautiful woman, follow the trail of my flock and graze your young goats by the shepherd's tents. You are as exciting, my darling, as a mare among Pharaoh's stallions. Man, what a way to come back. She has all these insecurities, and Solomon comes back and says, baby, you look like a horse. Now, I would not recommend that for guys in here. If you're married, don't do that. Before we shot this, I was talking to my wife one morning as she was getting ready, and I said, man, you are so beautiful. And she's like, thank you. I said, yeah, you look like a horse. That won't end well, guys, okay? This is why it's important to understand the genre that this is written in. This is Hebrew poetry. And so what Solomon's saying when he says you look like a mare, you are as exciting as a mare among Pharaoh's stallions. He's referring to a line of horses in wartime. And they would have a line of horses and soldiers on top of those horses. And they would need to hold that line while they were in battle. And if they put a mare in that line, especially if she was in heat, the other horses that were the male horses couldn't pay attention and couldn't hold that line because they were so distracted by the mare. This is what Solomon comes back with when she talks about her insecurities. He is verbally affirming to her physical appearance. He basically looks at her and he knows she's insecure, and he goes on truthful overload with verbal affirmation. What he's saying is, what are you talking about? All the guys notice how beautiful you are. What are you saying? Nobody can even pay attention when you walk into a room. That's how beautiful you are. You're dark. Who cares about that dark? Everybody thinks you are a hottie, is what he is saying to her. Now, we know this, that there are differences between men and women. Men are visual, and you're going to see as we go through this that he's very, very visual. And we know that women tend to be more verbal. In the Song of Songs, she speaks roughly 60% of the time, and he only speaks about 30% of the time. She gets the first and last word. But if you notice, when Solomon does speak, he makes it count. And he gets most likely out of his comfort zone, and he is verbally affirming to her, making sure she knows verbally, because women are verbal. We're not, guys, but we got to do this. Making sure she knows how beautiful he thinks she is. He continues and says, how lovely are your cheeks. Your earrings set them afire. This is important, guys. Please listen to this. This is so practical, y'all. Is it practical, D? This is practical, right? So he says, how lovely are your cheeks. Your earrings set them afire. How lovely is your neck, enhanced by a string of jewels. We will make for you earrings of gold and beads of silver. Okay, point number 5, we see the first love language come out. Okay, there are 5 love languages, and we are going to put them on the screen right now for you to see. These are the 5 love languages. All 5 of these love languages you are going to see in the Song of Song, and right here we see that one of her love languages clearly is gifts, because Solomon says to her, you know what? I'm going to buy you some earrings. I'm going to get you some jewelry. He recognizes her love language and learns it, and he is speaking her love language. Now, as we get through this, you're going to see one of his love languages. All of these are going to be present, but one of his love languages is physical touch. And again, she recognizes that, and she makes sure that he's getting plenty of that love language. I would recommend to every single person in here that you pick up the book by Gary Chapman called The 5 Love Languages. Read it about 5 times, memorize it, because it is an incredible book that you need to read. Well, the woman starts to speak again, and she says this: the king is lying on his couch, Enchanted by the fragrance of my perfume, my lover is like a sachet of myrrh lying between my breasts. Your kids need to be in the kids' ministry, y'all. Okay. If you're watching online right now, just go find one of our Rev Kids services online. He is like a bouquet of sweet henna blossoms from the vineyards of En-Gedi. Solomon starts to speak again, and he says this in verse 15, how beautiful you are, my darling. Listen to how affirming he is. How beautiful you are, my darling. How beautiful. And then he says this, and this one's big. This is a huge one, y'all. He says this, your eyes are like doves. Point number 6. Men, and this goes for the females too, you commit to one woman. This is a big statement he's making when he says, your eyes are like doves. When Solomon mentions doves, that's important because doves are monogamous. Doves are known to have one mate their entire life. And Solomon is saying, he's telling her, you are my one mate. I'm committing to you emotionally, physically, mentally. What he's essentially saying is, I have eyes only for you. Don't miss this too, guys. He's actually looking her in the eye when he speaks to her, which again is outside our comfort zone. Guys don't like to talk face to face and look each other in the eye and stuff. Women have no problem doing that, but he's doing this for her. But he's saying, I am committed to you. I'd rather live in a tent with you than in a mansion with someone else. And he's also getting ready to commit, not just with his words, but in marriage. He's getting ready not to play house with her and make promises. He's getting ready to not just say it, but he's going to live it. Now, you're going to see a dove mentioned several other times as we go through this book, and it's very significant because it means it is one woman, one man for life. Think about Adam and Eve at the beginning. It was not like an episode of The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. God didn't say, I'm going to take all your ribs out. You're going to have 20 different ones to choose from. We'll have a competition to see which one's the best. No, one man, one woman are married for life. This is not a TV show. This is not, we're going to date around. This is not, we're going to play house and figure out, if we can live together and all this stuff. This is Solomon saying, you are the one. She says back to him, you are so handsome, my love, pleasing beyond words. The soft grass is our bed. Fragrant cedar branches are the beams of our house. Ladies, I'm going to speak to you now. Fragrant cedar branches are the beams of our house, and pleasant smelling firs are the rafters. Number 7, very practical for you ladies. Notice what she talks about. They are engaged right now, and it's clear that Solomon is building them a home to live in once they are married. And she is saying to him, I am very appreciative of the home that you are providing for us in the future. She's saying to him, man, you work hard, you are a hard worker, and I am so appreciative of what you are providing. Point number 7, women, be verbally respectful to him. When you're engaged, even when you're married, ladies, be verbally respectful to him. Now, practically, we can learn a couple of things from this. She's proud of him for providing the house. She's already talked about his job. So for the single guys in here, I want you to listen to me because I'm going to tell you the number 1 pickup line you can use to pick up a godly woman. Okay? Don't call her a horse. Don't say, did it hurt, baby, when you fell from heaven? Don't say stupid stuff like that. Here is the number 1 pickup line that we can glean from this because it's clear that Solomon has a job, he's building her a house, and he is providing. Here it is, guys. Are you ready? Go up to a godly gal that you've got eyes for and you think, man, I could marry her one day, and you just say, hey, I've got a job, I pay my bills, and I don't live with my mom and dad, and I'm 30 years old. Man, she'll be like, when we going out? I'm telling you guys, this is pickup line number 1. Guys, listen to me. If you can't say that, then you are not ready to court one of God's daughters. You're not. If you can't say, I'm responsible, I have a job, I pay my bills, I live on my own, mom still does my laundry, they do the dishes for me, I don't change my own oil. No, 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 no. You are not ready to court, to date, and to be married. And you need to find a mentor. You need to get involved in the men's ministry here. You need to be discipled in the area of what it means to be a man. Ladies, what this means for you is, very practically, if a man does not measure up to this and have this kind of character, you don't get with him. You know, guys, there is a gender spectrum right now that's always talked about in our culture, and I don't agree with that gender spectrum, obviously. We think there's men and women, and that's it. It's the way God created you, the way you were born, okay? But I learned about something new on the gender spectrum, and it's called a hobosexual. A hobosexual, ladies, is a guy that magically falls in love with you when he gets kicked out of the place he's living and his license is suspended, and he needs somewhere to live, and he needs someone to drive him around. Y'all get it? You do not get with that guy. No. You find a guy like Solomon. He works hard. He provides. He has a proven track record. Ladies, for you that are married, let me just say something to you. Here's the side note for you. You need to be appreciative for what your husband is providing. Listen, I've done a lot of marriage counseling. And ladies, let's just be honest. You tend to talk about what you don't have and what you want. I really wish we had a bigger house. I really wish we had a nicer car. I really wish we could go on a better vacation. That is death to your relationship with your husband. Take the phrases "we need" and "I wish we had this" out of your vocabulary and start to say, I'm really appreciative of the house you've provided us. Man, I'm so glad of the vehicles that you have provided us. I'm so glad that you work so hard. And I promise you this will pay dividends. Husbands, I'll just say this to you. And I got this out of, I believe I got this out of a commentary. Let me just read it to you. Women usually are unattracted to their husband due to their character. So it has nothing to do with the amount of money you make. It has to do with how hard you work. Men, listen to me if you're married in here. You work full time. You don't make her work full time while you work a little part-time job so that you can be off. Let me put this in practical terms. Men, you take the garbage out. You don't make her do it. Men, you don't sit on your butt and play video games while she's mowing the yard. I know this is crazy, y'all, but how practical is this for us? Men, you have character. That snow hit last week. Your wife better not have been the one out there shoveling snow off the sidewalk. It better have been you, guys. It better have been you. Well, now we're going to go into chapter 2. And we're going to blow through chapter 2 really quick. I've just got a couple points in chapter 2. You still with me? How much time we got? Man, we're going, ain't we? Oh, man. Chapter 2. We're going to get it done in like 3 minutes, okay, y'all? So chapter 2 starts out like this. This is still her speaking. She says this about herself. I am the spring crocus blooming on the Sharon plain, the lily of the valley. See where we've prostituted this book and we've made it all about Jesus, and it's kind of weird, but I'm getting ready to blow your minds, and you're going to see why this is not about Jesus and the church here in just a minute as we read something. And so the lily of the valley is Solomon's wife, the Shulamite. And then he speaks and says, like a lily among thistles is my darling among young women. Point number 8. This is very clear. Men do most of the pursuing, even if it hurts, guys. Let me unpack this a little bit. He says, and this is the visual picture that he is giving, there is a field full of thistles. In your translation, it may say a field full of thorns. And right in the middle of that field is a beautiful, beautiful lily, a beautiful flower. And in order for him to get to that flower, he is willing to go through the thistles and through the thorns. He's willing to go through pain. He's willing to change. He's willing to do whatever it takes to get to that flower. He does the pursuing. The majority of the pursuing, not her. Ladies, let me speak to you for a minute. I want to tell you something. If he doesn't pursue you, if he's not chasing you, he is not the one. He's not the one. If he's not the one calling you, trying to set things up, if he's not the one that's making changes in his life for you that hurt, if he's not giving up God's not and all the stupid stuff he used to do for you, listen to me, ladies, he is not the one. You do not chase him through thorns. He's supposed to chase you through thorns. Men, this speaks to us because it tells us we stop being selfish when we're dating, when we're courting, when we're engaged, and we start to change. We start to do the things that are going to hurt. I remember when I was first married, the first year, I used to go to the gym every single night. And one of the things I had to change that really, it was hard for me because I loved working out. I had to quit working out at night because I had to go home and be with my wife. And once I did it for a little while, it was one of the greatest things I got to do. I loved it. Hard at first. It was like going through a field full of thorns. Couldn't do what I wanted to do. I thought about her, and I was willing to go through the pain for her. In fact, what you're going to see in chapter 3 and 5 is when she pursues him, it's in the middle of a nightmare. When she's pursuing him, it's when they got in a fight and he leaves the house and acts like a baby. And it's not in a good context. But when he pursues her, it's joyful. Just like right here. It's so joyful. Now, we're getting ready to see her talk about her wedding day and her wedding night. And so I just want to point this out too. I hope we all know this. Women, probably almost their entire lives, have thought about their wedding day. Okay? Probably they've thought about their wedding night too. My daughter, when she was about 3 years old, somebody gave her as a Christmas gift a wedding dress, and she couldn't wait to dress up in it and act like she was marrying me. Guys, we don't think about the wedding day, but I guarantee you, men, if you're dating someone right now, she's probably thought about the style of dress she's going to wear. She's probably thought about the kind of flowers that y'all are going to have at your wedding when you have not thought about anything. And if I could give you some advice, men, when she's dreaming about her wedding or when it comes to the wedding day, you're going to see this next week. Man, it's all about her. So you shut up. You do what she tells you to do. You don't fuss. Whatever kind of food she wants, whatever kind of flowers she wants, whatever kind of ceremony she wants, you don't care because it's all about her because she's dreamed about it. She's thought about it. She can't wait for it, and she's really looking forward to it. In the meantime, you haven't thought about anything to do with your wedding day. Listen to what she says, and I'm going to stop a little bit just to explain a couple of these confusing verses, and then my part will be done. She says, like the finest apple tree in the orchard is my lover among other young men. I sit in his delightful shade. Remember, she says, I'm dark, I'm ugly, don't look at me. So when she mentions shade here, she's speaking to protection and her insecurities and how he makes her feel emotionally. She says, I sit in his delightful shade. And then she says this, she's thinking about her wedding day and her wedding night. So let your imagination just kind of go a little crazy. I sit in his delightful shade and taste his delicious fruit. Now, when it comes to a wedding night and a wedding day, what could she be talking about? What could she be talking about? See, this is why this is clearly a story between a husband and a wife. These kind of things don't happen between us and Jesus, and it didn't happen between God and the Israelites. We can glean some wisdom on how Jesus loves the church and loves us, and God loved the Israelites. We can glean some stuff, but literally this is a story between a husband and a wife. She's tasting his delicious fruit. Did y'all know God was for this stuff? He's for this stuff in the right place. It's like a fire in a fireplace, y'all. As long as it stays in that fireplace, it'll heat up the whole house, and it's awesome. You can roast marshmallows, but if it gets outside that fireplace, it'll burn the whole house down. This stuff, in the context of marriage, it's like, roast some marshmallows, y'all, roast some marshmallows. She says, he escorts me to the banquet hall. It's obvious how much he loves me. Now, in your translation, it might not say it's obvious how much he loves me. It might say his banner over me was love. His banner over me was love. I think that's a better translation because what Solomon is speaking to when he talks about a banner is when they were in the middle of a war, there would be these huge banners that would be 20 and 30 feet off the ground. And if you found yourself out in the middle of a battlefield with no one around you and felt like you were unsafe, what you did was you looked for that banner. And if you could fight your way back to that banner, you were back in safety because you were back with your army and your people. So what she's saying once again is she's speaking to protection that Solomon is giving her. If I feel like I'm in trouble, I go to him and he will protect me, and I know that I am safe. Verse 5, strengthen me with raisin cakes. I love this verse. She says, strengthen me with raisin cakes, refresh me with apples, for I am weak with love. She's looking forward to her wedding night, guys, and she's preparing for it like you would prepare for a marathon. Okay? She's like, I'm loading up on Gatorade. I got some power bars in my purse. I'm making sure my electrolytes are loaded. I'm not going to have any cramps because on our wedding night, we're going to have a lot of fun. Verse 6, it says, his left arm is under my head and his right arm embraces me. Promise me, O women of Jerusalem, by the gazelles and the wild deer, and here's the first time she says this, not to awaken love until the time is right. Here she is looking forward to her wedding day and her wedding night, while at the same time honoring God because she is waiting. They can't wait to be married, but they're going to honor God and do what He tells them to do. I can so relate to this. We can relate to this, right? Continues in verse 8. Ah, I hear my lover coming. He is leaping over the mountains, bounding over the hills. My lover is like a swift gazelle or a young stag. In other words, man, my fiance is a stud. He's a stud. And he doesn't put the STD in stud. Look, here he is. There he is behind the wall, looking through the window, peering into the room. My lover said to me, rise up, my darling. Come away with me, my fair one. Look, the winter is past and the rains are over and gone. The flowers are springing up. The season of singing birds has come, and the cooing of turtle doves fills the air. The fig trees are forming young fruit, and the fragrant grapevines are blossoming. She says the season of love is almost here. It's widely recognized that in winter, all the leaves are off the trees. The things that need to die. All the animals go into hibernation. But when spring hits, it starts to blossom again. All the animals wake up, and what do? They start to procreate. Spring is widely recognized as the season of love, and she says that season is almost here, and I can't wait. She says, rise up, my darling. Come away with me, my fair one. And then he speaks and says, once again, my dove is hiding behind the rocks, behind the outcrop on the cliff. Let me see your face. Let me hear your voice. For your voice is pleasant and your face is lovely. Once again, singular. You're my dove. I'm only got eyes for you. You're the one. Then the young women of Jerusalem speak, and listen to what her friends say right before her wedding. Man, great friends give great advice, man. They're cautiously optimistic about their marriage, but they give one last great piece of advice when they say this. Catch all the foxes, those little foxes, before they ruin the vineyard of love, for the grapevines are blossoming. What were they saying to her? They were saying, you need to make sure you take care of all your baggage now. Make sure, because even little things that you haven't repented of, even little things that you haven't taken care of, it can come into your marriage and it can cause all kinds of damage and destroy it. So what they're saying to us now is, listen, if you need freedom from your past, if you've had past relationships that have caused pain, if you've had sexual sin in your past, you need to repent of it. You need to get that behind you. If you got baby mama drama right now, then you need to get that handled before you get married as best you can. If you've been divorced and you've got the pain and distrust that comes from divorce, you got to deal with that right now. And if you don't have a relationship with God, boy, that's a fox that will absolutely destroy your marriage. Because if your relationship with God is not solid now, your relationship with any female or any male will absolutely be broken. What I'd like to do right now, because I think it's a disservice every single week for you guys just to hear from a man on these subjects. I think the men need to hear a female perspective, and I think the women need to hear a female perspective too. So we are going to have a moment with the pastor's wife, as my wife, Brooke, who leads worship for us, is going to come up, and she's going to spend just a few minutes talking to you guys about really the first 2 chapters of the Song of Songs, right?
Right. I feel like lots of churches shy away from this subject, so I'm really thankful that we have a pastor who's willing to talk about the tough stuff. Can we just give it up for our pastor? Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. So what I want to do is I want to talk about how we can redefine and challenge the way that we think about dating. So get ready to take notes because I talk fast. I'm going to try not to. Why date? Examine the reasons for why you want to date. Are you being pressured? We already know that the world pressures us, but I've also seen some strange things. I've seen parents who are pressuring their 6-year-old to have a boyfriend at school or to have a girlfriend at school, and I've never understood that, because why go ahead now before your kid is ready, push them into that kind of drama and hurt and pain? They're not ready. We can also, I was talking to a teenager last week about she was wanting a boyfriend, and I said, why? Why do you want a boyfriend? And she said, every time I talk to my friends, they say, why don't you have a boyfriend? You're so weird.
6th grade?
Seventh grade.
7th grade.
A 7th grade teenager. Yeah. So why does she want a boyfriend? Because her friends think she's weird. And I had to explain to her that God's people are weird. We are a peculiar people.
Normal's broken.
Right.
Normal is totally broken with finances, with relationships. I mean, goodness gracious. So we should strive to be unusual, especially in this area, right? Like that's just...
I was even talking to someone older, like a 30-ish-year-old, who was also being pressured by her parents to go ahead and get married and go ahead and start having babies. And we do not date because someone else wants us to. We date because it's time, because God says that it's time. And maybe another reason, like you're pressuring yourself. Maybe you want experiences, or maybe you want to be experienced. And that is definitely not a reason to date. Is your why the same as God's why? And I think God says if you're not ready for marriage, then you're not ready for dating. And I know that's really hard for us to understand, but if we're just craving like attention from the opposite sex.
So good. You know, Pastor Brandon, can I interject?
Yes.
Pastor Brandon says that dating couples typically act like they're married now, but they're not.
Right. And I want
so it's just incredible.
Yeah, I want to talk about that too. But like if you're just looking for someone to give you attention, that's not a reason. If you're looking for a guy to save you, girls, a guy just to save you, only Jesus can save you. And I feel like we're so much looking for that guy who will just be our knight in shining armor. If you're looking for someone or anyone just to hold you and love you, you're not ready to date. Here's how to know if you're ready to date. First, I feel like you've found freedom from the past. You have dealt with your dad not being there, maybe abuse that you've been through, hurt. You've dealt with your baggage. Then you are ready.
And side note, can I say this? You may not even know you have baggage, because baggage is totally normal today. It's totally normal for people to have more sexual partners than they've driven cars in today's world. It's totally normal for people to have been shacked up 5 times. So you may not even recognize it, which is why you need godly counsel. And the way you find freedom is through connecting with people who love Jesus. You get in a group here, you go to the women's ministry, you go to the men's ministry, you find people in the church that love Jesus that can speak truth into your life. So I just got to say that.
Yeah. And another way that you know is if you think TV relationships are total drama. You're not looking for that. You look at the Kardashians and you just roll your eyes. You look at shows like that and you roll your eyes. That's not the kind of relationship that you're craving. You look at movies, and I know that we love Hallmark movies and things like that, but if we think that we can actually get a Cinderella story, then we are not ready. You are ready if you know that movies are totally fake.
I was even thinking about like growing up in the 90s and 80s. Like we watched Will Smith on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air chase every single female that he ever thought was attractive. We watched Steve Urkel like say he had to have Laura when he was like 13 years old. Like it's crazy. The cultural examples we have, guys, are just totally broken. So it's insane.
It's an old show.
Yeah, and it is old. I know, I'm up.
Another way to know we're ready is if we have little to no drama in our life. If it's constant drama, we're not ready. If you're surrounding yourself with godly friends and they're giving you godly advice, that's one way to know that you're ready. You are done partying and you've been done a long time. That's one way to know.
In other words, the people that you're taking advice from are not, now I'm not knocking on anybody in here, okay, y'all? I'm just saying, let's use our brains for a moment, okay? It blows my mind how people the pastor gives them advice, someone with a very successful marriage that loves Jesus gives them advice, and they totally, man, I'm not going to listen to that. But they go to their friend that's had 50,000 relationships, tons of sexual partners, been divorced 5 times, 3 different dads with kids and stuff, and I'm not knocking that. I understand. God can give you freedom from that. We want all people here. But please, don't go to people just because they're going to tell you what you need to hear. Most likely you need to hear something different. And what did we say a few weeks ago? If you don't agree with God,
then you're wrong.
And who needs to change their mind? You do, not God, right? So,
right. And the next thing I want to talk about is some things to keep in mind if you are ready to date and some things that are reserved for marriage. And number one, we have to say intimacy is reserved for marriage. And I really wish the church had done a better job when I was growing up, because the only thing I heard was sex is bad. And that was it. There was no other talking about it or explanation about it. And so as we learn today, the Song of Solomon was read at Passover every year. And to me, that says that God thinks that this is important. The Bible says that this is important. And so I'm going to ask the really tough question right now. How far is too far when you're dating? How far can you go? What are the boundaries? And I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful pastor so he can answer that question.
I would say that if we're not legalistic. We don't believe in crazy things that some churches believe, like no interbathing. And, fundamental Baptist churches, you can't swim with somebody of the opposite sex. That's crazy, y'all. That's legalism. If you're getting a peck on the cheek when somebody's telling you goodbye and you're kissing them, that's probably okay. If you're holding hands at a movie, that's probably okay. But let's be honest. I mean, something that's pretty common, French kissing, the only time you're going to do that is when things get pretty hot and heavy. And so I've had rules like this before that, think about it this way. I would say don't do anything you wouldn't do in front of your kids until I hung around some people and I'm like, I can't believe they're saying that and doing that in front of their kids. But let's say that I'm with you. What would you be uncomfortable doing in front of your pastor? What would you be uncomfortable doing in front of God? I used to say, what would you be uncomfortable doing in front of your grandmother? But again, that doesn't work for everybody. And to the guys in here, just from my perspective, I would say that men are physical and we are visual. Women tend to be more relational and verbal. And because we're physical, you see this play out many different ways, visual and physical. Practically, this is why guys want big tires on their trucks, is because we're visual. We're physical, so we wrestle, and we like playing football and contact sports. But when it comes to your relationship with the opposite sex, the things you see will cause you to have feelings that will lead to things that are destructive in your life. Can I say it another way?
I don't know.
No, I'm not going to say it that way. We'll wait till later. But the things that ladies, you have no idea the power you have physically. You have no idea. No idea. There are moments where my wife can hold my hand or something that seems so insignificant to her, but to me, it's like, come on. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like it's instant with dudes. I've often described it as women's sex drives are like a symphony. It takes a while, you get everything going. It takes about 30 minutes to get it all going. Guys are like a drum solo. It's like boom. And so guys, if you're single and you're trying to honor God and you're also trying to honor her, you got to figure out where that line is, man. You got to be really, really careful, because this is something you don't want to play around with. We know sex is good. That's why some of y'all are having sex before you're married. But what we're telling you is, you're eating a 99-cent hamburger when you could have a Ruth's Chris steak. Does that make sense? Okay, go ahead.
And we've got to be careful, just what kind of situations we put ourselves in with guys, like being alone and who we're hanging out
Right.
with and where we're hanging out and things like that. But I want to move on
Sex
to
is a wonderful thing, though, and we're going to talk about this in one of the weeks. It's a gift from God that he gives us. And the only time God speaks in this word, in this Bible, is when they are consummating the marriage, and God looks at them and says, have fun. You'll see. You'll see next week. But go ahead.
Don't get
Go
ahead
ahead.
of yourself. Another thing that I want to talk about, and this is tough to say, especially in these times, but reserved for marriage, living together. Playing house is not okay with God by his standard. And I know it seems like there's a lot of good reasons to live together. You can save money. You can find out if they snore. You can find out if they're messy. But it's not God's way. And if a guy is okay with it, then you are not special to him. You are God's daughter, and you deserve to be treated better than that. And so, lastly, how do you know if you're ready and he's ready? You're honoring God now. That's how you know.
Seek first the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
Walk on you.
Seek a boyfriend first.
Right.
Seek God first.
That's right.
But it's easy to think that people will magically change when they get married. Like, okay, we'll start going to church when we get married. We'll stop partying when we get married. We'll settle down and stop sleeping around when we get married. But that kind of stuff doesn't magically happen. Yeah. Ladies, he needs to prove that he's mature before you get married. Don't expect him to mature after you get married. Yeah. So look at his character and his patterns. And I say this to my daughter all the time. You cannot change someone. Only God can do that. And as we heard earlier, change is pain. So I made a list. How are his finances? Does he waste his money? That guy, if he is saving for the future, that guy is ready. Has he gone through the pain of dropping his friends that disrespect girls? That guy is ready. Has he gone through the pain of giving up his Sunday hobby to attend church and to serve at church? That guy is ready. Does he say he loves you, or does he treat you like he loves you, like in Song of Solomon? That guy is ready. And also, we've got to look at ourselves. We've got to look at our own patterns. Are we still in drama? Are we still constantly getting hurt and gossiping? Are we surrounding ourselves with godly women? A little plug for small groups again. And are we committed to our relationship with God and our church? And I'll close with this. Let me just remind you, like King Solomon, he should be the one pursuing you. Don't chase a guy. If he's not chasing you, he's probably not the one that God wants for you. And I just want to share this real quick. We met at Papa John's, hence the pizza T-shirts today. We both work there, and my father-in-law tells this story all the time.
The missing piece of my heart.
Of how he came home from work one night, and he couldn't stop talking about the short, blonde girl.
To my dad?
To your dad, yeah. So, if you are meant to be married.
Tell him how I pursued you first time I got you to talk to me.
He went through the drive-thru on foot, and he jumped on the bell.
You know the bell you
the
ride
little
over
bell
that lets
that makes
people.
the drive-thru.
I jumped up and down on it because I knew she was leading. She was the only one in there, and she had to come to the window and say, "Who's doing that? Stop it!"
And that's how it started. Okay, but I did want to say this because this is the most important thing I can say today. If you are meant to be married, God will put a desire in his heart for you. So wait until you're ready.
I don't want to marry y'all. She's saying the man to the women, right? The man, right? So, yeah, it's good.
That's
so
all
good.
I've got.
That's good. Well, guys, let me pray us out. And thanks for joining us online. If you're joining us, when I get done, we're going to cut it off. But incredible weekend. Let's give Miss Brooke, my wife. Cut that out. Let me do that again. Let's give Brooke a hand as she did just an incredible, incredible job speaking on this subject, man. So good. I married up. You know what I mean?
So did I.
Like, why in the world did you say yes to me? How could you do that? So let's pray. Lord, we love you. We thank you for today. I pray for every single person in here that we seek to honor you in our relationships with the opposite sex. For the single folks in here, for every single person that maybe they've been divorced, maybe they've been through pain. That's more often the story than not. For the teenagers in here that are right now making decisions that are absolutely going to impact the future for them. God, I just pray that we honor you. We learn from the Song of Solomon. Thanks so much for this book, God. If you attend church, you tend to think God doesn't really have anything to say about relationships and marriage and dating and sex and being physical and all this stuff. But man, you clearly have so much to say, and we thank you for it. I thank you personally for my marriage and for my wife, and we just pray we honor you the rest of our days. In Jesus' name, amen. Love you guys that are joining us online. We will see y'all really soon.